Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on quite a fascinating journey into an ancient text. We've got an excerpt from Nissaggiya 4, that's a section of Buddhist monastic law, the Vinaya. And our mission really for this deep dive is to explore how this, well, deeply human incident, maybe one you wouldn't expect, led to a very specific rule. It reveals a lot about the pragmatism behind early monastic life. It's a story showing how seemingly small actions could spark major regulations.
That's right. And these texts, they're much more than just historical records. They are practical guidelines, often incredibly precise. They're designed to keep harmony in the community,
Right.
ensure purity, and really critically safeguard the public reputation of the Sangha. Every rule, no matter how small it seems, usually has a pretty compelling reason, often rooted in a very human event.
And the origin of this particular rule is, well, it's certainly surprising. It kicks off with a monk, a nun, and a chain of events that, frankly, takes quite a turn. So, okay, let's unpack this. Right, so our narrative opens in Savatthi Jetavana, that's Anathapaticha's monastery, and we meet a monk named Ayasma Udāyi. Now, Udāyi had a former wife, and she had also taken vows to become a bhikkhuni, a Buddhist nun. The source tells us they kept in touch quite often, visiting each other despite their, new monastic lives.
Yeah, it seems that past connection wasn't entirely cut off by their ordination. The source actually recounts a very personal and, well, deeply inappropriate incident. Early one morning, Udāyi visited the bhikkhuni, and the text describes a highly explicit encounter. It involved exposing private parts and Udāyi emitting semen, and that was followed by an even more shocking turn.
Right, and the story, it just unbelievably intensifies from there. Udāyi then asks her to get water to wash his lower garment, his antaravasaka. But the bhikkhuni astonishingly offers to wash it herself. And the narrative takes a really disturbing turn when she then engaged in further deeply inappropriate acts, which led to her becoming pregnant. And when the other bhikkhunis confronted her about her condition, she apparently recounted the full graphic details of what happened. Now, you'd naturally assume, wouldn't you, that the pregnancy or the explicit misconduct would be the only thing drawing the Buddha's attention. But what's really astonishing, according to our source, is that the formal rule, the one we're focusing on, was actually triggered by a different complaint, something far more, well, seemingly ordinary. Why did they focus on Udāyi asking her, the bhikkhuni, to wash his old robe, his purikavara?
That's a crucial point about how these laws actually got formed. The pregnancy was a huge scandal, obviously, a massive breach of purity. But the act of Udāyi making the bhikkhuni wash his robe, that was a visible transgression of monastic protocol, you see. It was a public display, something that could undermine the Sangha's image, easily misinterpreted by lay followers. And the text is very specific about this old robe, the purikavara. It defines it as a garment that's been worn once or covered once. So it wasn't some ancient tattered rag. It was just a used monastic garment. And this complaint, the asking an unrelated nun for this kind of service, became the sort of actionable final straw that reached the monks, and then eventually the Buddha.
Okay, so when the Buddha heard about that part, the robe washing, he directly questioned Udāyi. Is it true, Udāyi, that you made a bhikkhuni wash your old robe?
Udāyi confirmed it.
Yes, he confirmed it.
And then the Buddha asked if she was related to him.
Crucially, yes. And Udāyi explicitly said she was unrelated.
Unrelated. That distinction being unrelated is the absolute pivot point here. The Buddha then admonished Udāyi, called him a foolish man, basically, for not knowing what was proper conduct when dealing with an unrelated bhikkhuni. The Buddha made it really clear that actions like this, they don't inspire faith in people who don't have it, and they don't strengthen the faith of those who already believe. This kind of thing directly undermined the trust and respect the Sangha needed from the wider community.
It's striking, isn't it? And it's not just about punishment. It's about codifying trust, preventing even the appearance of impropriety. So from this specific, very convoluted incident, a really clear training rule, Sikapada, was formally declared. Whatever bhikkhu makes an unrelated bhikkhuni wash, dye, or beat an old robe, it is a Nissaggiya Pācittiya.
Exactly. And let's break down the language here, because every term carries significant weight. A bhikkhu, well, as many listeners familiar with the Vinaya will know, is a fully ordained monk. Simple enough. But unrelated, Anyattikaya, the definition here is surprisingly rigorous. It's not just someone you don't know. It specifically means not related by mother or father up to the 7th generation of paternal grandparents.
Wow, 7th generation.
I know. This detail really highlights how important family ties, or the lack of them, were in these rules. It creates a very clear boundary. Then, a bhikkhuni is a female ordained by both Sangha's monks and nuns. And as we said, an old robe, kurakavirai, just means it's been worn once or covered once, used, basically.
Okay, so the offense isn't just the act itself, but the ordering of it. How did they break down the levels of offense?
Right, understanding the nuance here is key. It's not just doing it, it's the ordering. For instance, if a monk orders her to wash the robe, that initial command gets a dukkaya, which is a minor offense. But the moment that robe is actually washed, boom, it escalates to Nissaggiya.
Yeah.
And the same idea applies to dyeing or beating the robe. The instruction is one level, completing the act is another. If he orders her to beat it, for cleaning, just a single strike with a hand or a club makes it Nissaggiya.
And this Nissaggiya Pācittiya, that's a serious category of offense, right? What does it actually mean in practice?
That's right, it's significant. It means the item itself, the robe, in this case, must be forfeited, given up. It has to be handed over to the Sangha or to a group of monastics or even just to one individual monk. The text even gives the exact words for the forfeiture. Bhante, this old robe of mine, which I had an unrelated bhikkhuni wash, is subject to forfeiture. I forfeit it to the Sangha. It's a very formal, public act of taking responsibility. It really emphasizes the communal nature of monastic discipline.
That level of meticulous detail is just fascinating. It does make me wonder, though, given how serious the initial incident was, why this intense focus on the, well, seemingly minor robe-washing rules. What was the underlying fear? What were they trying to prevent? And how did they apply this rule in different situations?
That's a great question. And you see, the text isn't just about punishment. It's very much about prevention and managing how things look from the outside. The initial incident was, yes, a clear breach of purity, no question. But the public act of asking for a service from an unrelated nun, especially given their history, well, that was a visible breach of decorum. It could easily be misinterpreted by lay people and damage the Sangha's reputation. That's the key. This meticulous detail just shows how thoroughly they thought through all the potential misunderstandings and ways impropriety might even be perceived. The text outlines, dozens of specific scenarios. It shows just how comprehensive these rules were trying to be. For example, simple case. Monk knows she's unrelated, makes her wash, dye, or beat an old robe, Nissaggiya Pācittiya. Straightforward. But then it gets layered. If you order her to wash and dye, it's a Nissaggiya plus a dukkati. Order washing, dyeing, and beating, that's a Nissaggiya with 2 dukkalas.
Okay, so it stacks up.
Exactly. And even if there's just doubt about her relation, Vimatiko, or you make a mistake, you think she's related but she isn't, Natika Sanya for Anyatikaya, that still gets you a dukkaya. Interestingly, if you make a relative wash it, but you think she's unrelated, also a dukkaya. Or if you make another person wash it, like not a bhikkhuni, or even just a sitting cloth, Misadana Prakathanai, or a nun ordained only by one Sangha, Ikatu Upasampanaya, all dukkayas. Minor offenses, but still offenses.
So it's this really fine-grained scale of severity, always aiming for precision. But that raises the obvious question. There must be exceptions, right? When is it not an offense?
Precisely. The Vinaya is just as detailed about the cases where there's no offense, the anapati. For instance, if it's a related bhikkhuni washing the robe and you know she's related, no problem, no offense. Or slightly different, if an unrelated bhikkhuni washes it, but a related one is also present at the time, that also removes the offense.
Ah, interesting. Like a chaperone, almost.
Kind of, yeah. And crucially, if she just washes it without being told of Udāyi, so the monk didn't order her, then there's no offense on his part. Also, if the robe is brand unused, it's fine. If he makes her wash other items, other requisites, besides robes, that's okay too under this specific rule. And finally, certain people doing the washing exempt the monk. A sikamana, that's a female trainee, a sammatari, a female novice, or if the monk himself is considered mentally ill, umatakasa, or if he's newly ordained, adikamikasa, maybe just doesn't know all the rules yet. These exemptions show a real pragmatic understanding of human limits and different levels of responsibility.
This whole journey through just one Vinaya text, it's been incredibly revealing, hasn't it? What started with a truly surprising personal scandal, a very human and frankly shocking chain of events, ultimately led to this meticulously defined rule about something as seemingly mundane as laundry. It really underlines how deeply these rules reached into every single aspect of monastic life, all designed to safeguard not just individual purity, but the whole community's reputation.
It absolutely does. This kind of deep dive really shows you the incredible detail, the pragmatism, and maybe even the foresight embedded in this ancient monastic law. These rules weren't just about dishing out punishments, they were about building a framework to prevent impropriety, maintain decorum, and fundamentally protect the integrity and the public perception of the entire Sangha. They clearly understood that even what might seem like a small, private action could have pretty significant ripple effects on how the whole community was viewed.
It makes you think, though. If one single incident could lead to such a detailed, precise rule about washing a used robe, you can only imagine the sheer volume and complexity of all the other rules they must have developed over time. It's really a testament to how complex the social rules of any organized group have to become just to account for all the endless nuances of human behavior.
Indeed. And maybe that raises a final question for you, the listener, to ponder. What other common everyday actions, things we just take for granted, might have surprisingly deep or complex historical or ethical rules attached to them? And what does that tell us about the values of the societies that created those rules in the first place?